Hey there guys, and welcome to this week's episode of Matthew Annie Presents, and thank you to all the subscribers who commented on last week's video, because you guys helped me decide what I'm reviewing this week. And continuing the series of Regeneration episodes, I'm going to be reviewing the Doctor Who TV movie. And for anyone wondering, you reviewed it before. We did that about 9 months ago, and my opinions on the 8th Doctor have changed. So without any further ado guys, enjoy. So then, let's get on to my review of the Doctor Who TV movie. For anyone, of course, if you do not know, yes, myself and James reviewed this 7 months ago. It was our first ever review, but my opinions have changed on the Doctor TV movie, and I have given it a different rating since the last time that I watched it, which was a hell of a long time ago. It's the first time I've watched the Doctor Who TV movie since Paul McGann returned in The Night of the Doctor as well, so it was weird to see his Doctor in the Doctor Who TV movie now, considering we've seen him return. It was quite a strange experience. But yes, you subscribers helped me out, and you all agreed that I should re-review it to kind of keep this series complete. So that is exactly what I'm going to do, and it's not a wasted review because my opinions have changed. Some have stayed the same, some have got worse, some have got better. So let's get a few facts out of the way about the Doctor Who TV movie. It was transmitted in the UK in the 27th of May 1996, written by a guy called Matthew Jacobs. I know it was received a lot worse in the US than it was in the UK, and obviously, of course, with Paul McGann, it had a British lead actor and it had a British director. So, the synopsis of the TV movie follows: the Doctor, nearing the end of his 7th life, is charged with transporting the remains of his fellow Time Lord, the Master, back to their home planet, but despite his precautions, his old enemy is not quite dead. The Master creates a timing malfunction that brings the Doctor to San Francisco in 1999. The Doctor has to find a beryllium atomic clock and stop the Master, but after being shot by gang members, his life is in jeopardy. So the plot. Well, at first glance that might sound slightly intriguing, and the synopsis does make the plot sound pretty good. I mean, if I'd not seen the movie before this, I'd look at that and think, that sounds pretty good, I'll give that a watch. But when watching it, I think the plot is quite two-dimensional, quite cliched, and a bit generic. You know, the Doctor basically is getting chased by the Master because the Master wants his body. Yeah, it's not the most complex plot, especially in Doctor Who. You know, in the classic era and the modern era, we've had some plots that have blew our minds, and I just thought the movie, considering it was 90 minutes, yes, it was longer than the Day of the Doctor by about 15 to 20 minutes, the plot seemed a bit loose, and I do think that the writers could have maybe filled it in with a bit more of a complex story, a bit more, a few more layers to the story maybe. But the synopsis itself sounds promising, but while watching it, I think that the synopsis is a bit of a mask, really. You know, it gives the movie a fake mask that it doesn't quite live up to. But yeah, the plot itself is pretty lazily written, and it's quite cliched and simple, in my opinion. But let's start with some of the things that I liked. The first thing that obviously struck me was the beginning, the opening titles and the opening monologue, which I loved. I thought that, you know, if it's a TV movie, it's written by Americans. You know, they're guaranteed to not get everything 100% right. But if they can, you know, still bring back some of their nostalgic moments that make Doctor Who, then I'll give it to them. And the opening titles, they tend to send shivers down my spine every single time. The way that there is the 8th Doctor's monologue over the, well, I wouldn't say it's a vortex, it's kind of the Gallifreyan in space and stuff. And he says, it is a request that should never have been granted, and then it just builds up, da-da-da-da, and then it just goes poof, and it has the classic Doctor Who logo, and it has epic titles and epic vortex, and it just gives you the shivers. You just think, oh, you know, the start of this movie, straight away it hits you and it makes you think, this is Doctor Who. You know, one thing that was probably the biggest challenge for the writers in this movie is to make it feel like Doctor Who. You know, it was in San Francisco. It had a lot of American cast in it. You know, it was a lot of different, you know, people who probably haven't worked on Doctor Who before. So to make it feel like Doctor Who was a massive challenge, and as soon as them credits hit, as soon as them titles hit, I instantly thought, wow, this is Doctor Who. This is going to be brilliant. And the 8th's voiceover, after the credits, the 8th was voicing over the 7th Doctor, who was sat reading a book. And I thought the 8th voice, and Jamie pointed this out as well, the 8th Doctor's voice over the 7th Doctor's actions kind of foreshadowed his regeneration. You know, for anyone who, obviously people would have known, the movie stars the 8th Doctor, Paul McGann, he's obviously going to regenerate, but I loved the way that the 8th voice was over the 7th Doctor, basically describing what has happened, that the Master has run out of his lives, the Doctor is having to transport his dead remains. I like the way it was the 8th monologue over the 7th Doctor, and the monologue worked absolutely brilliantly. And the new TARDIS, I mean, I know that one of the things that the production team probably had over any other production team in Doctor Who at that time was money. And the set design and the costume design, everything was top notch when it come to budget in this movie. You know, they had scale, they had sets, the TARDIS itself was huge. I mean, the console room in itself is probably the biggest in any TARDIS. It had, you name it, it was like the size of a house. Talk about being bigger on the inside. And then there was the room with the Eye of Harmony, which looked like something out of Lord of the Rings or something, but it still looked awesome. You know, so one thing that they did very well, I think, with this movie, definitely with the production value, is that they put a lot of money into it and a lot of effort to make it look like Doctor Who, and I loved the TARDIS. Then we move on to something I didn't like, which was the 7th Doctor's death. Yeah, I was just beginning to really feel like the movie was like Doctor Who. I felt like I was watching the same show that I'd seen in the classic and the modern series, and then the 7th Doctor got shot by a gang. Not only was this regeneration and cause of death very undeserving of the 7th Doctor, it was very sudden and very anticlimactic, and reminded me of the 6th Doctor's regeneration. It came out of nowhere. We knew it was going to happen, obviously, but all he did was walk out of the TARDIS and got shot by a couple of guys. And I thought, really? I mean, I just felt as if the writers just wanted to get the 7th Doctor out of the way. You know, yeah, they had him in the TARDIS at the start, you know, and he materialised in San Francisco, but as soon as he materialised, he got shot. But that wasn't his actual cause of death. He then went into the hospital, of course, and was basically begging the stupid American doctors to listen to him, but they were thick, they don't have a clue what they're doing, and they basically let him die. So, what a stupid, undeserving death for the 7th Doctor, and it seemed as if the writers just wanted to get him out of the way, which was very unfair. Yes, it stars the 8th Doctor, and I'm grateful that they gave the 7th a regeneration, because we could have been in the same situation with the 8th Doctor's regeneration if they had not gave the 7th a regeneration, but his cause of death just felt a bit unfair, if you ask me, and I think in our regenerations countdown we did, it was probably the second worst after Colin Baker's, I'm not sure, but yeah, I didn't like that. I didn't like his cause of death at all. But his regeneration, I thought, actually looked good. Once again, the modern side of Doctor Who, the money, the updated CGI, the technology that they had back then, really much more advanced than it was back in 1989, and you could tell. The regeneration looked brilliant, but the electricity, really? I mean, since when is the Doctor's regeneration? I mean, I know recently it's been causing big blasts of gold energy that's destroyed the TARDIS on one occasion, and destroyed a town called Christmas on another occasion, but it being electric, I didn't quite get. I mean, they compared his regeneration to Frankenstein, which I didn't like at all. The music was over the top. The guy who was in the morgue was acting was just so awful, and comparing it to Frankenstein, and when Frankenstein shouts, "He's alive!" and then the Doctor sits up, I'm just like, he's not the freaking villain, he's the hero. You know, the Doctor doesn't regenerate like that. I mean, I know that it's good to have a dramatic regeneration, but that was over the top, and there was some problems, and sometimes in this movie where things were very, very over the top. I didn't like his regeneration, apart from them using the amnesia effect, which obviously has occurred before in Doctor Who, which shows they did their research on regeneration. I thought that the way it looked, the morphing effect was brilliant, but the electricity, the music, the Frankenstein-esque "he's alive" was just not needed, and I didn't like it at all. Let's talk about the Master now. Yeah, I've waited to rant about this for a hell of a long time. Eric Roberts is without a shadow of a doubt the worst master in the history of life, but there were some parts and some aspects of his master that I did like. I mean, him taking the form of others and being hypnotic, that shows that the writers knew a little bit about the master. They know that in the classic series, of course, Anthony Ainley's master, he took the form of Nissa's father in The Keeper of Traken, and he's always been very hypnotic, as we've seen throughout Doctor Who. So to see him hypnotise people and take their bodies made me think, yeah, this guy's the master. But all reality and all believability of him being the master was completely flung out of the fucking window when he got green eyes. He looked like a jizz snake, which is a long-time joke that we've always had over this master. He was a jizz snake, he had green eyes, and he spat acid? Really? Since when has the master spit acid and turned into a snake? So apparently when Time Lords use up all their bodies, they turn into a snake that looks like jizz. So is that what would have happened to the 11th Doctor after the time of the Doctor? If they hadn't gave him new lives, would he have turned into some slimy jizz snake that could growl and take people's bodies, to then have green eyes? I don't think so. I think that the problem with some of the writers in the movie is that they didn't do enough research on the master. They got a few things right, but they just went too far, making him have green eyes and spit acid. What a stupid continuity fuck-up by the writers. He was over the top, extremely generic, and at one point he pulled his nail off. But why? Why did he do that? To make himself look threatening? I thought the green eyes would have been enough, but no, the Americans thought, we'll take it to another level. He'll pull his freaking nail off. Yeah, good move. I hated his master. I thought it was the most forgettable master, and I think when people look back at the master and they look back at his regenerations, they think of John Sim, Roger Delgado, Anthony Ainley, even Derek Jacobi, but then they think, oh wait, Eric Roberts was the master, wasn't he? Oh yeah, he played that shit master that no one remembers. Ah, yeah. That's the impact he had, and he's an awful actor as well. He was the worst villain in The Expendables 1, and his acting career's gone so downhill, he's going to be in the third Human Centipede film. Enough said about Eric Roberts right there. Anyway, let's move on. Now, the soundtrack to this TV movie was inconsistent, shall I say. It worked at times. Like obviously music is a big part of Doctor Who, especially in the modern series. It worked, the music worked at times, but there was a lot of operatic music used in the TV movie, a lot of ha, and there was like loads of extremely like, oh my god music. And at times I thought, okay, it's not really needed, like his regeneration. The music wasn't needed. It worked well at parts, but was very overdramatic and misused, and it made certain scenes... It was like the music was trying to force some scenes to be dramatic. You know, I think the writers might have thought, oh, this scene might not be as dramatic as we want. We'll just shove loads of music in there. It didn't work, you know, they didn't need the music at times. It was like they were trying to force the drama a little bit. So yeah, the soundtrack was very inconsistent. And one thing that happened in the movie, which was obviously very iconic, is the first Doctor companion kiss. And many fangirls will have been like, oh, the first time the Doctor kissed a companion. Oh, it was so beautiful, oh, the fireworks, oh, it then led to him kissing Rose, to him kissing Martha, even kissing Donna for some stupid reason, kissing River Song for about half a dozen times. No, I did not like the first Doctor companion kiss. If there was a reason for it, then yes. The Eighth Doctor was youthful, he was an old romantic, so I would have accepted him having a little bit of an attractiveness towards a companion. And let's be honest, okay, I think Grace Holloway was slightly attractive, but it just, another thing that just seemed forced. He just realised who he was, so he snogged her. What if Capaldi realises who he is? Is he going to snog Clara? Hell no, it was just not needed, and even though it started a fangirl tradition, I thought it was just completely in the wrong place at the wrong time, and if it wasn't for that kiss, we probably, well, I think we'd have still had a kiss in Modern Who, to be honest with you, but I just thought the first Doctor companion kiss was misused. It was random out of the blue, and it had no impact, really. I mean, it's not like if they hadn't kissed, then the world would have ended. It was just stupid. Well done, America. You've started off a trend that then led to the 10th Doctor and Rose love story. Everyone knows how I feel about that. And a big, massive continuity fuck-up that really freaking annoyed me. I mean, I thought that the writers had done well. I thought, oh, they've mentioned... I mean, the references were very good in this. I mean, the Eighth Doctor was asking people if they wanted jelly babies, and I was like, ooh, that's the Fourth Doctor. And you know, and the thing about the Eighth Doctor is he had so many different aspects of previous Doctors. You know, he had like a first Doctor-esque costume, he had the youthfulness of Peter Davison's Doctor, he had the wit of the Fourth Doctor, he had a bit of every Doctor, and I thought, wow, you know, they may have not done that much research, in fact, no freaking research on the Master, but they've done a lot of research on the Doctor, and Paul McGann did steal the show for me. His performance as the Doctor was very believable, and I thought, they've got this bang on the money, until they mentioned that the Doctor was half human. What the fuck were they thinking? The Doctor's not half human. He's from Gallifrey. They even mentioned that he's a Time Lord. The Master's a Time Lord. So why the hell was the Doctor half human? Are they stupid? Are they really that thick? An idiot would have realised that he wasn't half human. The biggest continuity fuck up in Doctor Who. What the hell? He's not half human, and it's never been mentioned since. They got the 13 bodies bit right. They got everything right, but he's half human. Oh, give me a break, really? So, let's talk about the companion. Now, Grace Holloway, at first, when I watched the movie, I've watched it a few times, I can't remember, about 4 or 5 times, and I didn't like her companion at first. I'm very forgettable, but I don't think she gets the credit she deserves. I think Daphne Ashbrook's performance was very good in the movie. And her chemistry with Paul McGann's Doctor, I liked very much. There was a scene where they were running out of the, where the beryllium clock was, and they were running and they were holding hands, and they jumped on the bike, and she hugged him, and it was like, here we go again. They really looked like the perfect match. You know, I thought then the way that they came together, the way that she worked in the hospital, and, well, she was the woman that basically killed the Seventh Doctor, really. So I think the way that they came together worked very, very well, and the writer's written the companion/Doctor relationship very well in this story. Of course, they've written it well up until they kissed. But yeah, Daphne Ashbrook's performance as Grace Holloway was brilliant, and even though she's far from the most memorable of companions, I think she's slightly underrated. I do enjoy her, and I thought she put in a good performance, considering, like Paul McGann, she'd not been in Doctor Who before, and she was kind of thrown in the deep end as to say, you're going to play the companion, you're going to follow in the footsteps of all these other companions that we've seen in the past. I think she did an alright job. And the ending, I didn't like the ending to the movie. I thought it was very over the top. I'm sure you've all seen the movie, but just in case no one has, I'm just going to say it was very over the top. The music was just, what the hell? You know, I felt like I was listening to an operatic theatre performance, and I just thought that, I'm not going to give away how it happened, but basically Grace had to put 2 wires together to basically save the world. That was it, really. It was very cop-out, and I thought that the writers basically got a bit lazy towards the end, and didn't quite know how to end it, and the Master at the end his death was like some out of a fantasy film. You know, he basically fell into the Eye of Harmony and was like, I'm alive, no! And for some reason, the Master then started growling like some kind of dog on rabies or something, you know. Really, I didn't like the ending. So, let me conclude my thoughts on the Doctor Who TV movie. So, the Doctor Who TV movie was an admirable effort at bringing back Doctor Who. The plot was pretty generic and cliched, but it was carried by some brilliant acting and direction. Paul McGann stole the show for me as he walked into Doctor Who and depicted his own version of the Doctor brilliantly while still having glimpses of his predecessors. Grace Holloway was a pretty good companion, not the most memorable, but her chemistry with the Eighth Doctor was very good. The references and knowledge of classic Doctor Who were pretty nice to see, the Jelly Babies, the Time Lords, Gallifrey having 2 hearts, etc. But the Doctor being half human is the stupidest continuity fuck-up I've ever known being Doctor Who. It seemed like they'd put a lot of research into the character of the Doctor, but done no research on the Master whatsoever. Eric Roberts' Master is the worst by a long shot. I liked his ability to take bodies and hypnotise people, but green eyes, spitting acid, and growling like a rabies-ridden bull mastiff was extremely over the top and showed the American writers hadn't done their research on the Master. The music was also very over the top, as was the Doctor's regeneration and his horrid cause of death. The ending was a slight disappointment to a plot that had slight premise and slight promise, but overall the movie was watchable, and I can understand how it is some people's guilty pleasure. My rating 7 months ago when we first reviewed it was a 6 out of 10, but I have grown to appreciate the movie a lot more, and Paul McGann's Doctor a lot more, so I'm going to rate the movie now a 7 out of 10. So, guys, before I end this video, let's answer some comments, and I cannot wait to read some of these out from my Time in the Rani review last week. This feels like it should have been a 6th Doctor story. Whenever I watch it, I just imagine Colin Baker in place of Sylvester McCoy. I completely agree. I do think it would have been better as a Sixth Doctor story. I think the one thing that let this story down was the fact that the Seventh Doctor had just regenerated, and he just became the Seventh Doctor, and he was suffering from amnesia, which were good effects, but not used very well at all. The Rani was disguised as Mel because he had amnesia. The first two parts were pretty much took up by the fact that he had amnesia, so I think if we were to have had the Sixth Doctor, obviously, probably the main story arc, probably the plot itself would have been a hell of a lot different. We might have had a completely different episode, because I think most of Time and the Rani was based around it being the Seventh Doctor's first ever story. But I definitely do think, looking at it and looking at what happened in the story, putting the Sixth Doctor in place of the Seventh, I think it would have worked better, because we wouldn't have had the loopiness, we wouldn't have had the amnesia, and we wouldn't have had the Rani in that god-awful makeup. I just watched it to see if it's really as bad as you say, and it is. Episode 1 is hands down the worst episode in Doctor Who history, and even though McCoy is my favourite Doctor, as he got better later on, even I have to admit his acting in this story was abysmal. I have no desire to watch the other 3 episodes. I'm glad you agree with me. I mean, it is the first episode in Doctor Who where I can genuinely say I found it difficult to watch. Even some stories in the past, like The Wedding of River Song and Destiny of the Daleks, at times I felt like, can I really sustain this? But then there's parts which grab me and keep me in the story, but there was literally nothing about Time and the Rani that wanted me to keep watching it. I only kept watching it because I had to review it. Owen Salmon's a friend of ours. You've probably heard of him, you probably subscribed to his channel. He has never even got past episode 2. Honestly, I think getting past Time and the Rani should be a challenge. I genuinely think that they should use Time and the Rani to torture terrorists. You never know, it could work. You know, putting Time and the Rani in front of them for about an hour and a half to 2 hours, that's enough to drive someone crazy. So I definitely do think it's the first ever episode in Doctor Who history that I've ever seen so far that is probably the only one that's actually unbearable to watch. And I completely agree with McCoy's acting. If someone was to have watched Time and the Rani and it was the first time that they've ever seen McCoy's Doctor, it's not the best first impression, and it's not the first impression he deserves, because he is much, much, much better than what Time and the Rani shows. It was established in the Day of the Doctor that the Doctor doesn't really know his age because he is so old. So to think of a solution to that plot hole, I'd say he just lies sometimes. Personally, I think the biggest plot hole is when the 11th Doctor started to regenerate in The Impossible Astronaut, even though he was at the end of his limit. 2 very, very annoying plot holes. When I read this out to James, I think we were going somewhere when this comment came through, and we had a good discussion about it. Yeah, the Doctor's age is a massive plot hole that really annoys the living daylights out of me. I think Moffat basically said, oh god, you know, Russell has fucked up the Doctor's age. It was rather consistent up until the modern era, and yeah, Russell made the Doctor 903 when he was clearly 953 in Time and the Rani, and then all of a sudden, if you put the 8th Doctor, who was probably the Doctor for a good couple of 100 years between the movie and the Night of the Doctor, then John Hurt, who was the Doctor for probably even longer, so that's about, estimated between Paul McGann at the very beginning and the end of John Hurt, that's probably about 400, 500, 600 years. John Hurt did say himself that his Doctor was 800 years old, so I think that Moffat basically carried on the Doctor's age, and by shoving John Hurt right in the middle of the hiatus has fucked up the mythology and the Doctor's age completely. He's 953 in Time and the Rani, and he's 800 in the Time War. So who's screwed that up? The classic or the modern? The modern. So Moffat makes a stupid excuse to basically say, oh yeah, let's just say that the Doctor forgets how old he is. How can the Doctor forget how old he is when in the Day of the Doctor he clearly said 400 years, is that all it takes? So if they're so sure that there's 400 years between John Hurt's Doctor and Matt's Doctor, where does the 7th Doctor come in? That really annoys me. About the other plot hole, about the Doctor starting to regenerate, that is so solid. It's one that I've never thought of before, but definitely, if the Tesselector can basically duplicate itself and clone itself to be exactly like the Doctor, cell by cell, right into his heart, how the hell did it get the ability to regenerate? Moffat clearly didn't think that one through. If he planned, like he says he did, planned Matt's entire era at the very beginning, if he knew that Matt was the final body that couldn't regenerate without a new cycle, why the hell did the Tesseract start regenerating in The Impossible Astronaut? Yeah, Moffat, quite a few plot holes that you have created, and quite a few that you have got to tie back up. Moffat's not very good with plot holes. I look forward to seeing your Vengeance on Varys review. Although you didn't like Time and the Rani, at least you were able to admit that you still enjoyed McCoy, who was quite funny at times. I don't know if you've seen Curse of Fenric, but that is definitely one to check out. A brilliant story, and McCoy showing some glimpses of how dark the Doctor could be. If I had £1 million, I would offer you to watch Time and the Rani again, and I bet you'd say yes. Well, I will be reviewing Vengeance on Varys at some point, probably in a couple of months' time. I'm looking forward to seeing it. But yeah, I'm trying to persuade James to get Curse of Fenric if he can get his hands on it, because I've got Remembrance. So I want him to get Curse of Fenric, so we've both got a fantastic, solid 7th Doctor story. But what you said about McCoy showing glimpses of how dark a Doctor could be, like I said, and I don't want to repeat myself, I think that that Time and the Rani could have scared people away from the 7th Doctor a little bit. You know, first impressions in Doctor Who are everything. And we all know what happened when the 6th Doctor made a bad first impression. 1984 to 1986 happened, and when Sylvester McCoy's Doctor didn't make the best impression, not the worst impression, but not the best, far from, he might have scared a couple of people off, and some people might have stopped watching before they even gave McCoy a chance. So I definitely think a debut episode for a Doctor is probably one of their most important episodes to get right, because if you get it wrong, it can scare viewers away, and I sadly think Time and the Rani had such a bad impact on the 7th Doctor's era. Definitely not what he deserved. So then guys, thank you for watching this week's episode of Matthew Ronnie Presents. As always, drop a like on this video, subscribe to our channel, and please do comment below your thoughts and opinions on the Doctor Who TV movie. Give me your own little mini review and your rating out of 10 in the comment section below, and I will read them out at the end of next week's video. And to stay updated on the channel, guys, if you are active on Facebook, go to our Facebook page. It's just Who Addicts Reviews. Drop us a like on there, it'd be much appreciated, and you'll be able to stay updated on everything that happens on the channel. Next week, guys, my Regeneration series will continue with a story that's not on this box set, but it is the next episode in the Regeneration series of Doctor Who, and I will be reviewing The Night of the Doctor. Can't wait for that, guys, but until then, see you next week.